Welcome to the 12th annual Media Asia Conference in Kyoto this year. Right? This is also the second conference on arts, media, and culture. So Yokoso, welcome to Japan. We're still suffering under the ravages of the pandemic, obviously, but I really like the opportunity that this gives us. A lot of people who normally couldn't make it all the way to Japan for the conference can still attend virtually. And it really, we found, kind of diversifies our participants. So not only do we have a lot of fantastic speakers during the plenary sessions, we have a lot of great keynote speakers and featured speakers, and some fantastic panel and workshop presentations. But the actual presenters we have are coming from such a wide variety of backgrounds that I'm really excited this year. I can't wait to hear everybody's presentations. We're really, really lucky. So I know it's a little difficult to be doing everything online. I know we'd all like to be together in a room and talking, but I'm trying to celebrate the fact that the technology really allows a lot more people to come, and people who wouldn't normally have this opportunity. So that really makes me happy. And I hope you will enjoy the wide diversity of participants we have this year too. So I think we have some announcements to make. I want to thank the organizing committee, Nasia Bafen from Australia, Joseph Haldane, who's also the head of IAFOR, Bradley J. Ham, Virgil Hawkins, Eric Hawkinson, who you'll hear shortly, Celia Lamb, Paul Spicer, and Gary E. Swanson is your organizing committee. And I think we've put together some really good panel discussions and some really good plenary sessions this year that I'm really proud of, and I think you'll enjoy them. This is obviously just today's schedule, right? So after this introduction, we're going to hear a really interesting workshop, right? Immersive Media Design Showcase. I can't wait. This is not my area of expertise, so I'm really looking forward to learning a lot on this topic. And you can see we have an amazing selection of participants from Japan. So that will start at 10:10 immediately following this introduction. And then Wednesday. Oh, well, then later today, I'm sorry, we have more keynote presentations starting at 11:20. When Media Watches You, The Rise of Immersive Technology from Eric Hawkinson, who's also on the organizing committee. Then we have an online networking session from 12:05 to 12:50 where you can talk with other participants. Then at 12:50, we have another amazing keynote presentation, Holy War, as portrayed in Japanese film from 1937 to 1945. From Brian Victoria. That's going to be a really interesting presentation, and I hope you stick around for that. And at 1:45, we're going to hear another keynote presentation, Spectacle and Scrutiny, the Analytic Image in Japanese Cinema. This is going to be presented by the amazing Earl Jackson, who is literally a Renaissance man. He is not just a scholar, he is also an actor and a writer, and he's also just completed a feature-length commentary on the DVD release, the new Blu-ray release of the Japanese classic Blind Beast. I have a copy of it, and it's fantastic. He has an incredibly broad range of scholarship, and I'm really looking forward to his presentation. And then on Wednesday, we have a live stream presentation session. So these are the parallel sessions. We'll have those all day on Wednesday, starting at 10:35 and ending at 4:30. So there'll be a variety of interesting parallel presentations going with 2 different presentations at a time. The only problem is you have to decide which one you want to go to, which sometimes is a little difficult, but we may have a solution to that. And then Thursday, we're going to be starting a little bit later. Hopefully this will help people who are coming from different time zones. So we'll be starting at 5 with the parallel presentations and going until 10:05. And again, this is all Japan Standard Time. I'm sorry, you have to adjust this for wherever you're watching from, right? So this will be Japan evening time. Maybe some of these will be a little bit easier for people in other countries to view. And I'm really happy to announce the IAFOR scholarship winners. Sauparnika Pavan Kumar Atavar from the Manipal Academy of Higher Education. We've had some great people from Manipal before. So Atamar has a lot to live up to, and I'm really looking forward to it. Jason Bartasius, he was an independent researcher here in Japan. I have seen his presentations before, and he's quite good. So I'm looking forward to that also. I encourage everyone to attend. And Nur Sakifa Aisyah Azlan from the University of Malaysia. This will be a virtual presentation that I'm really looking for. So please congratulate our scholarship winners. They've done some amazing work. I'm really looking forward to seeing their presentations. And if the time difference is a little bit difficult, we do have catch-up stream sessions. So on Vimeo, you'll be able to watch some of the sessions anytime you want, right? This is one way we're trying to get around the problem of time differences and the fact that the conference is virtual. So this is a really convenient way to catch up on some of those presentations you missed because there were 2 interesting presentations at the same time. So please also check our Vimeo stream after the conference. And we also have publishing opportunities. The Journal of Media Communications and Film. I'm the associate editor on the journal. We've gotten some really good papers out of this conference before. We look forward to some more. So if you have a paper in media communication or film, and you're looking for a place to get it published, please send it to us. We'd love to take a look at it. And also the Conference on Arts, Media, and Culture has its own publication. So if you're attending in that conference, they would also be interested in seeing your paper. Please send it. We'll review it and see if it's ready for publication, all right? And also, please follow us on all the usual social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, all right? We have a good Facebook page with lots of great photos from conferences and updates and good information on upcoming events. So up next, we're going to be going to a very interesting workshop on a topic I know nothing about, which makes me very excited. I'm going to learn a lot. This is the Immersive Media Design Showcase. We have a variety of speakers. Eric Hawkinson will introduce everybody. So please stick around for this. This is going to be a fantastic workshop from 10:10 to 11:10 Japan time. So the workshop will be about an hour. And I've seen a preview of it. It's an amazing amount of information you're going to get in 1 hour, presented very entertainingly. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Thank you for coming to Japan virtually. Hopefully next year we'll all be able to see each other face to face. We're not sure where it'll be. I'm hoping in Kyoto, but we're not sure. Hopefully next year we'll meet face to face. But again, I'm really, really prizing the opportunity to see so many different scholars from so many different areas we might not normally see people from. So this has really opened up some opportunities for people. And I think it's going to be a really exciting, diverse conference this year. I hope you enjoy it too. Thank you for coming. So Eric, would you like to take over?
Hello there, everybody. Thanks for the wonderful start, Timothy. Thanks to the organizing committee, IAFOR, Matthew, Shoko, Joe, and everybody there. You've been wonderful. It's been a great experience trying to help organize this event as well. I'm very excited, very happy to be with you today with a lot of my colleagues here with us in Zoom. We put together a very rapid fire set of content for you. We have some pre-recorded video, we have some chat and links we're going to be putting into the chat, and we're all going to be kind of going through the journey of how immersive media, immersive design is being used in a variety of different fields, a very interdisciplinary group that we've assembled for you today for this session. And right now, I'd just like to show you a little preview, a pre-roll of what we'll be talking about and going through today's session. Well, that's a little preview of what you could expect in this session. Maybe you can kind of tell that it's a very diverse group, very interdisciplinary group, but we're all doing things around immersive technology, immersive learning, immersive tools like augmented and virtual reality in various contexts. And uh, you, as participants in this conference and today's morning sessions, is all kind of built together to give a nice round picture of the trends, the world, and how immersive technology is being used. We're going to see a bunch of case uses today from our group, a collection of great speakers. And then if you want to get a rundown of the trends and a rundown of the technology and how it's the direction it's going, that's the next session after this. And then we're going to give you a chance to try some of these things out. Some of these presentations that you'll be seeing in the session today, you'll be actually able to hop in to maybe a virtual world or try some augmented reality in our networking session later on in the afternoon. This is all, of course, Japan Standard Time, but it's all coming up in the next couple of hours straight, so you don't really have to work out the times for that as well. Right? We have a whole group of presenters, but they're here in different contexts. Groups here in Japan from TED to Maver, which is the Immersive Learning Research Group that I help coordinate, and different contexts and different situations. So there's a lot of different things happening with our group of presenters today. I'll try my best to introduce them one by one as we go through. They're all here in the chat. We're going to be showing you some pre-recorded video, but they are ready and looking to interact with you as these presentations are happening, so they can interact with you directly as you're watching their presentation. So please use the chat, use it early, use it often. We are looking forward to engaging with you as this presentation goes along. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first presentation. This is Jay Klaphake, one of my colleagues here at the Kyoto University of Foreign Studies. We're kind of throwing a curveball at you to start here because a lot of people that don't have a lot of experience with immersive technologies may not know that there is also a legal and ethical use case, concerns around using this technology. We all have issues maybe perhaps with social media and how that's progressing in the world of data collection and privacy issues. And so this first presentation is to help give you some nuance, some context to the world of immersive education, in educational context especially, but using this technology and how it collects more information about us as we use it than any other technology before. So without further ado, here is Professor Jay Klaphake.
How many of you would ask your students to put a chip into the back of their head or plug their brain into the net for one of your classes? Would you be willing to put a VR headset on their head? Would you still do it if you knew they might have to log in and identify themselves to the headset maker, even without logging in? Would you ask them to put on a headset if it has inward and outward facing cameras that can possibly identify who they are anyway, and what they're doing and maybe what they're thinking? Would you ask them to do that knowing that the information is being captured, collected, and monetized by an outside company? Most of my workshop colleagues are talking about things like utilizing VR headsets and AR apps in virtual environments, and I know they're going to be presenting some very interesting uses of mixed reality, especially in the classroom. And like them, I really love experimenting with and using technology. In addition to being a law professor, I'm also the founder of TEDx Kyoto, and today I've been invited to talk to you about events in XR, events like TED or TEDx in XR. But rather than do a tech demo or present a case study, I want to offer you a sort of anti-case study. Rather than seduce you with cool tech, I want you to consider the downside of being too quick to embrace XR. Now, I'm not going to show you a demo of my students doing a mock trial using a VR courtroom, and I'm not going to show you clips from TEDx Kyoto being broadcast in 3D. And I have two main reasons. In both of those cases, the tech is really not good enough yet, and the benefits don't outweigh the violations of privacy involved. First of all, I'm not very interested in conducting VR mock trials utilizing today's technology because it just doesn't meet my standards or objectives for a good mock trial experience. Now, as a researcher, it might be fun, it might be interesting, but as a student, it's not really as compelling or realistic as being in a physical courtroom in the real world. And as a jury member, you can't see the witness's eyes when they raise their right hand and swear to tell the truth. You can't look into their eyes when they are testifying, and you can't see the sweat on their brow when they're being cross-examined. The rendering of the courtroom is still graphically limited, and hey, there's no smell-o-vision. A courtroom should smell like a little bit like old dusty wood, and the audio is not quite right. Police officers' leather holsters should squeak when they sit down or stand up. It just doesn't have the veritas of sitting in a physical courtroom. Not yet, at least. As for TEDx events, well, while there are a lot of TED Talks and TEDx Talks about AR and VR, there have been only a handful of TEDx events that have experimented with 3D and VR environments, and those are really novelties and, as I said, few in number. And with good reason. Even in the midst of the pandemic, we at TEDx Kyoto haven't held a big event, even in Zoom. We haven't done it, and we're not planning to, because tech doesn't always make for a richer experience. In fact, TED asks their live audience to put away their devices and just listen. Just focus on the speaker and listen. Because it's distracting when we're using tech, because it sometimes diminishes the experience. And even though you can still watch all of the TED Talks online for free on TED.com, people are still willing to pay thousands of dollars to attend that event in person, because it's about being there in the moment, as it is happening, while it is being created. And it's about being there together with other real people, not avatars, but with real live human beings. Now, sure, we have done VR painting activities during the after party. That was fun. Eric and his team have done AR activations during the breaks, and those were well received. But those things are additive, not replacements for real human-to-human engagement. And finally, the even more compelling reason is the very, very frightening privacy concerns raised by letting a handful of tech companies control these devices, the software, our data, and by extension, our minds. Eric and I have spoken and written about the legal, ethical, and privacy implications of this technology, especially in the classroom. And please check out some of his recent videos about the metaverse. They're great. I think we're all by now aware of the dangers to democracy brought on by social media platforms that all too often use algorithms that amplify our disagreements with each other instead of bring us together. So let me just say, if you haven't read The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff, make that the next book you read. It's more terrifying than any horror novel by Stephen King. So here's my advice. Don't use XR to replace the things you can do well in reality. And don't use XR for things you already enjoy doing in the real world, like attending conferences and events where you hope to make genuine, authentic human connections and build trust. Use XR for things you can't do in reality, such as flying and battling monsters in a video game like a comic book superhero, or consider using XR for things you can't do in the real world. Maybe they're too far away. Maybe they're too expensive. Maybe they have a huge carbon footprint, or they're too dangerous to do. And, use XR for events you don't actually want to attend in reality, like faculty meetings, for example. Actually, Zoom or Teams is probably as real as we want those meetings to be. When it comes to XR, especially VR, and especially in the classroom, please exercise caution. Make sure you are using it for the right reasons, and that you fully comprehend the privacy implications of what you're doing. And please, please make sure that your students are fully educated and informed about the risks that they are undertaking, and that they genuinely consent to the resulting abrogation of their privacy. These tools and platforms are cool and a lot of fun, but hey, they are also mining and then manipulating our minds with the data that they collect. Thank you.
So this is almost almost dystopian, discouraging type message at the beginning, but it's new. We want to put this up front because it nuances some of the ideas, the concerns, and the designs of using this technology, right? As an educational technologist myself, often when people come to me and they want to use technology for a certain activity or a certain role or a certain event or whatever, I could just easily, hand them a whiteboard and maybe some chalk or even a pencil, because a lot of times the right tool for the job is not necessarily the latest in technology. But that being said, most of the other presentations you'll see today are doing just that. They're thinking about the design and the use and the case use of these technologies. And even during the pandemic, this has been able to get us back some of the things that we may have lost, for example, in student study abroad and travel and cultural exchange and things like that. Experiencing art and going to galleries that we kind of lost a little bit during the pandemic as well. So you're going to see some careful thought in a lot of the things that we're going to see moving forward in the presentations as well. But put that up front, and I hopefully will be talking a little bit more about the ethical and privacy concerns around this technology in the session later on today. All right. Next, I'd like to present to you Kojiro Yano as another researcher / developer. A lot of people that are on the cutting edge of this technology are not just researching it, they're actually making the world that they want to see in this technology, which is so wonderful about Professor Yano. He did a project with Eddie Yokoyama, and they're talking about the Emaki Mono, which is like an art panoramic scroll. I'll let him explain it to you, but I do want to tell you that you're going to be seeing him as an avatar presenting through virtual reality in a software platform that he himself has developed. So that in itself may not be easily understood as you watch this, but it is very impressive how you're going to be able to see him as an avatar through something he's developed himself. So without further ado, here is Professor Yano.
Hello, my name is Kojiro Yano. I'm going to talk about developing immersive learning experiences for Emakimono, Japanese historical narrative picture scrolls. This work is in collaboration with Dr. Eri Yokoyama at Osaka Institute of Technology. Before talking about Emakimono, let me talk about the situation of classic literature education in Japan. According to the courses of study for middle schools in Japan, students are expected to learn traditional linguistic culture in the subject of Japanese language, or called kokugo. More specifically, they should have opportunities to be exposed to the world of classic literature and enjoy the world, and also to be exposed to the viewpoints and ways of thinking expressed in classic literature and imagine the characters and the author's thoughts. Now, this is a result of a survey of middle school students by Japanese government. They asked, do you enjoy learning classic literatures? And 11.2% of the students said yes, 18.1% of the students said probably yes. So in total, 29.3%. This is a lot lower than the result from Japanese language, 57.5%, math, 55.7%, or English language, 53.3%. So clearly, Japanese students are not enjoying learning classic literatures, not as much as these subjects anyway. Well, if that is the case, what can we do about it? Maybe information technology can help. In Japan, an initiative called Gigaskill Concept is ongoing. Giga stands for Global and Innovation Gateway for All, and this project aims to deploy one computer per learner at national, public, and private elementary, junior, high, and special needs school, and develop a high-speed intra-school communication network environment that can be used with the cloud. So if this project goes well, we should be able to see a view like this in every school in Japan. And I want to take advantage of this. Today, I'm going to show you one of our projects for ICT-supported classic literature education. It's called VR Bandan Emaki. Bandan Emaki, a Japanese national treasure, is a narrative picture scroll about an arson of Otenmon, a large gate of the Imperial Palace in Kyoto, and this is a section of the Emaki. As you can see, there are a lot of people in there. Some of them are court nobles, and some of them are police officers. Emaki is a very important part of Japanese classical literature, but it is difficult to teach. Why? Because it's hard to show it on screen or on book pages. For example, the first volume of Bandan Emaki has the height of 31.5 centimeter and the width of 839.5 centimeter. It's quite long, isn't it? So when students want to see the Emaki on PC, for example, they can only see a fraction of it. And when we try to show the Emaki at a recent exhibition, we can only show this main part of the Emaki, but we couldn't show what was happening before or after this scene. So it's not ideal for students to understand the flow of the story of the Emaki. Another problem is that captions are short and often missing, as it happened with the first volume of Bandan Emaki. So student has to guess what each character is doing or thinking only from images. It's difficult if they are not familiar with this medium. So we decided to augment the characters on the Emaki to make them easier for students to understand. If you click one of the characters on the Emaki, it's going to start moving and it's going to say something with an audio and a subtitle. The words are not from the original Emaki, but they are produced by Dr. Yokoyama, my collaborator. They're going to help students to understand what the characters are doing and what they might be talking. Now, let me explain how the VR app was developed. Imagi images were taken from National Direct Library digital collections. The collections look like this. You can download Imagi images from this site. But images are very small, so I had to stitch them together into 3 sections, which are used in the virtual space. The app itself was developed on Unity game engine, and the target head-mount displays were Oculus Go and Vive Focus Plus. For character animations, we used a library called Live 2D Cubism. Live 2D Cubism is used usually for animating game or anime characters, but it can be used with any kinds of 2D characters, including those from Imagi. To use that, you need to separate a texture into small pieces, and for each piece, you need to create alert meshes and apply a deformation path to it. Once you have alert meshes and deformation paths, you can apply these parameters to them and link a specific value of a parameter to a specific form of deformation. Having done that, you can adjust these parameters to animate the character. After finishing the development of the app, we have done quite a few demo sessions like this one, mainly with kids, and we are very happy that they enjoyed the experience and got more interest in Imagi. However, we are not doing it at the moment because of COVID-19. And from these demo sessions, we have learned that even though we did our best to make the Imagi experience easy to understand, we still need to teach them. But it's hard to teach the students in VR if we are outside of VR. Besides, both Oculus Go and Biofocus Plus are now discontinued, so we can't buy them. So if we want as educators to use our app, we have to send devices as well as the app, and this is not the ideal situation. This has made us to decide that we should transfer our VR app to a social VR platform. Currently, we are testing Mozilla House, which is a multiplayer social VR platform, runs on web browsers because it's WebXR based. A room on Mozilla Hub looks like this, and it can be shared by URL. And this kind of room can be produced by web browser-based editor called Spoke. So you don't have to learn to use complex game engines like Unity or Unreal engines. The great thing about Mozilla House is that it's multi-platform. You can use a mobile phone, PC, or head-mounted display to access to Mozilla House rooms. So you can choose the one which suits you best. And this is great for Gigaskills because they may not have head-mounted displays, but they have PCs. So maybe they can buy a few head-mounted display and give it to some of the students for them to experience the immersive VR, while the rest can just use PC to access to Mozilla House rooms. So I'm hoping that more schools would be using our VR application on their PC devices as well as on head-mounted displays. This is VR Bandan Imagi on Mozilla Hubs. The spatial design is the same as the previous version, except for the background. We have text and audio annotations, but we don't have animations yet because we are still working on how to bring live 2D animations to Mozilla House. So the development is still ongoing, but you can try the current version on this website. You can use it on mobile phones, PCs, or head-mounted displays. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Professor Yano. It's wonderful to see him as an avatar. I know he loves his own avatar. I have my own actually as well. One key thing that came out as a theme here is the possible exacerbation of a digital divide when starting to put immersive learning situations context into education or other kind of communication places. And that's why educators like Professor Yano and myself and a lot of the other colleagues are leaning into these open standards of WebXR, meaning using the open web and not necessarily a closed or walled garden platform like Apple or perhaps Google or now Facebook, and trying to develop things. It's a little more accessible. It's a little more device agnostic. And so you can see that kind of trend as moving forward as well. And you saw it in Professor Yano's project with the emakimono. Beautiful. All right, let's move on to the next one. I want to keep moving. Next one, we're going to talk about the use of this technology in archaeology. This is Corey Noxon. He's a researcher at Ritsumeikan University, and he's been using XR to preserve, scan and preserve historical sites in Japan and all around the world. Most specifically, there's a site in Kansai. I'll let him explain the details to you that he's been working with to preserve digitally some of the history of Japan and save it for the world. So without further ado, here's Corey Noxon.
Hi, my name's Corey Noxon. I'm a senior researcher at Ritsumeikan University and a special researcher at the Lake Biwa Museum. I study prehistoric archaeology, and today I'd like to talk to you about the benefits that 3D scanning and XR can bring to the field. Archaeologists use material remains to help better understand the past. We can learn what people were eating, what things they were building, what tools they were using, what kind of environment they may have been from, and what their health may have been like. A large amount of the material used to derive these conclusions come from excavations. Unfortunately, excavations are destructive processes, and if data isn't properly recorded during the excavation, there's generally no way to go back and gather all of that data. The recording and visualization of site features and artifacts is therefore paramount in the field. While site reports include drawings and photographs of archaeological features and artifacts, these are done from fixed points of view and are very limited in the information that is able to be shared with the reader. While 3D scanning of sites and features in archaeology is not new, the way in which the data is being presented is changing. While scan results might have been included as 2D pictures in the past, digital reports are now able to add a previously impossible degree of interactivity. Full scans of site features and artifacts are now able to be uploaded and accessed online and can be viewed either on a monitor, a mobile device, in AR, or in VR. The freedom of movement that this allows remedies the previous issues of fixed focal positions, and it also provides the ability for viewers to freely explore non-highlighted areas and aspects of the archaeological features and artifacts. There is another important challenge related to excavations. Once artifacts are collected, they have to be stored and ideally put to use for the benefit of the public. The most common way this is done is to exhibit the materials in museums. Visitors can see excavated items that are hundreds or thousands of years old, and these items can serve as grounding points through which we can try to visualize and understand the past. There's one problem with this, though. There's not nearly enough space, and there isn't any real logistically sound way in which you could make enough space to even put a bare majority of the artifacts on display. To put things into perspective, in Japan in 2019, there were over 8.5 million container boxes of cultural heritage items being stored across the country, and that number is growing every year. It's hard to really wrap your head around how big of an issue this is. A container box in this case is about 60 centimeters by 40 centimeters by 15 centimeters in size. Stacked on top of one another, these would be around 1,300 kilometers tall, or about 4,000 Eiffel Towers. Lined up end to end, they'd stretch from Dublin, Ireland to New York City with room to spare. Those in charge of these collections have their hands full trying to protect and preserve these artifacts, even before considerations of how best to utilize these resources are made. Here again is where 3D scanning and XR technologies come into play. As of August 31st, 2021, over 1,200 registered museums, along with thousands of other cultural heritage-related projects, are sharing models on Sketchfab. In total, there are over 160,000 models labeled under the cultural heritage category, with approximately 50,000 of these able to be downloaded. The platform allows models to be viewed on PC, mobile devices, in AR as well as VR. Thousands and thousands of cultural heritage items are able to be viewed and accessed wherever an internet connection is available. Scanned data can also be utilized by museums as well. Providing a hybrid model of interaction, both physical and digital, would allow even more artifacts to be shared by bypassing the limits of physical display space. While a program like Sketchfab might provide a higher level of interaction than viewing a 2D picture, there's still something to be said about experiences like guided tours. Again, luckily there are advances in this direction as well, in the form of collaborative web VR experiences like Frame VR and Mozilla's Hubs. Here's a rough example of a project I've been working on. The city of Takatsuki in northern Osaka is home to the largest keyhole-shaped tomb in the Yodo River basin. The main burial mound itself is 181 meters long, and when the surrounding moats are included, it's approximately 350 meters in length. While this is impressive on its own, nearby is the Shin-Ike Haniwa factory site. At Shin-Ike, archaeologists uncovered kilns and workshop structures where the Haniwa figures for the nearby tomb were made, as well as residences where some of these workers may have lived. The burial mound, the kilns, the workshop, and the Haniwa figures that were made in those workshops are all interesting on their own, but together they can form a highly immersive story. A tour could introduce visitors to the site, allow them to take in some 360 views from the Kofun. The guide could show them models of the kilns to explore. Eventually, we come to the Haniwa figures themselves, but rather than just showing them the Haniwa models on their own, we can take the visitors inside a model of the workshop and discuss these virtual figures in a virtual representation of the workshop where the originals were made. It's an exciting time in the field. We have new ways of archaeological outreach and exchange, and we have new opportunities to bring people into contact with history through XR technologies. It's going to take some time, and there's going to be some trial and error, but I'm hopeful that the changes ahead will be for the better. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good day. Goodbye.
That was just wonderful. Thank you, Professor Noxon. Archaeology and the pursuit of digital twins is a kind of a key word in the XR circles these days, making digital replicas of real things, places, and people, and for the preservation of cultural heritage, being able to take a snapshot of this place in 3 dimensions for the future, for preservation, is a very worthwhile cause. And later today, you'll actually be hopping in with us in environments like what Professor Yano said, and come to visit Kyoto at one of our cultural heritage sites, much like that as well. This is Yasaka Shrine behind me right now. I know Professor Noxon is also working with the Lake Biwa Museum on some similar projects, and we're looking forward to seeing more about this exciting work that he's doing with XR, containing and using it for preservation of cultural heritage in Japan. Beautiful. All right. Got to move on to the next presentation, and we have a pair of presentations next. This is my colleague at Maver Mixed Augmented Virtual Realities and Learning research group here in Japan. We're a small group, about 30 researchers, mostly doing work around virtual reality, augmented reality for language acquisition, some other topics as well. And as we lost the ability to do study abroad during the pandemic, of course, we thought we could maybe do some help with this by using virtual and augmented reality to give students back some of those experiences of traveling abroad. And this project, the Hometown Project, is meant to help with that situation. So without further ado, let's hear from Mehrasa Alizadeh from the Cybermedia Center at Osaka University.
Hello, my name is Mehrasa Alizadeh from Osaka University. Thanks for joining me and my colleague Amelia. Today we'll be talking about my hometown project led by Eric Hawkinson. Amelia and I have both collaborated with Eric, and in my part of the presentation, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the past iterations of this immersive learning project. My hometown project was kicked off in April 2019 as a face-to-face class project, and in the beginning, Google VR apps, Expeditions, and Tour Creator were used to get students to create virtual tours of their hometowns. Tour guiding was conducted in class with students taking their classmates on virtual tours of their hometowns viewed on mini VR goggles that were attached to smartphones. A BYOD, bring your own device approach, was adopted in relation to the use of smartphones. However, the mini VR goggles were provided by the instructor. This setup worked well before the COVID-19 pandemic when all classes were face-to-face. Nevertheless, in 2020, after the emergency shift to remote teaching and learning, it was impossible to continue with smartphone VR, given that the Expeditions platform mandated the connection of the tour guide and tour participants to the same local network. Soon after, Google decided to shut down its VR applications. All these triggered the shift to web VR, which turned out to be more accessible, causing minimal levels of physical discomfort, such as sickness or fatigue, and which helped expand the scale of the project beyond borders. Since then, my hometown project has witnessed international growth with collaborators from Indonesia, Malaysia, China, and Vietnam, and now has its own independent platform. Back in 2019, when the project was still dependent on mobile VR, we collected survey data from the global tourism students enrolled in Eric's course. Here is a brief summary of our findings. The students were asked about the sense of presence, their engagement in the activity, and its utility. The responses revealed a rather high sense of spatial presence experienced when joining virtual tours in which they were introduced to their classmates' hometowns. The students highly rated their level of attention to VR content and tour guides, as well as their degree of confidence in and satisfaction with VR tours. The majority of the participants expressed their confidence in the effectiveness of virtual tours for learning about places, and they equally voiced their contentment toward the activity, which underlines the potentials of VR tasks and activities in tourism education. The last set of items in our survey focused on students' perceptions of the usefulness of VR tours and their willingness to learn with the aid of VR in the future. Similar to the other items of the survey, the responses to these items also bear evidence as to the students' high opinion of VR tours in improving their learning of tourism and tour guiding, alongside communication in English, which is undoubtedly an indispensable skill for successful tour guides in the globalizing context of Japan. The students also expressed their interest in having more learning opportunities enhanced with VR. We also asked the students about any symptoms of physical discomfort such as eye strain, dizziness, and nausea. The results show that most students suffered from some degree of eye strain caused by the use of mini VR goggles with their smartphones in order to get a 360-degree view of the tours. Other symptoms were observed, but to a much lesser degree. The good news is that now that the project has shifted to web VR, it's not only more accessible, but also much easier for the students to use. To further explore students' perspectives, We also asked them to share what they found enjoyable about joining classmates' tours and creating their own tours, as well as the challenges of this task. Interestingly, many of them expressed the joy they took in visiting a new place and learning about it, as well as getting to know more about their classmates. In creating their own tours, most students expressed interest in how the task helped them remember their childhood memories and rediscover their hometowns through the power of VR. Despite these rewards, there were a few challenges that some students faced, such as selecting spots to introduce to their classmates and learning how to create VR tours. This brings me to the end of my part of the presentation. Now my colleague Amelia will tell you about her experience in implementing My Hometown project in her class. Thanks for watching.
Right, we're just going to kick right in and go off to the next part of this two-parter about the My Hometown project. Amelia and myself actually put out a couple of research papers on this, and she was reporting to you on the kind of the results of that research. But this is actually beginning to be a much more wide range and growing project than I really had first imagined. And Amelia is at the Kyoto Institute of Technology, and she elected to try to use this project with her students, and we're going to get her perspectives from a teacher's point of view about using virtual reality in the Hometown project with her students.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I'm Amelia Ijiri, here to share my perspective of using the My Hometown project with my students this semester. First, I'd like to tell you why I chose this project. It's a web VR project, which means it works with student brought in desktop PCs over the internet connection that we have available at our school. Secondly, it's a storytelling project. I was really drawn to the aspect of students being able to use their own experiences to create something that is personal to them. This is an English language classroom, and I was hoping to avoid some of the scripted English exercises that we have with students who have a proficiency level to be creating something. And thirdly, global connections. This is the second year of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I was hoping to expand our classroom beyond the students that were physically on campus by connecting with other universities inside and outside Japan. And here's some feedback I received from my students. For one, they really liked the way that they could incorporate their own English into this project and say things that they wanted to say and communicate ideas that they had. Secondly, there was a connectiveness between all the students taking the course. And some of my students said that in the past they had been bloggers or they have an Instagram account. So they like that, being able to put their presence online. And this project, you receive feedback from other students on the project. So it's really two-way communication where people are looking at your work and giving you feedback versus just kind of sending your ideas and presence out in the world and maybe getting a few shortened replies on them. And the third feedback point that I received from my students is about digital literacy. I was hoping to expand their use of using educational technologies and using computers and what it's like to work on a project and have feedback and take in edits and make adjustments and everything. And I was thinking that this would be useful in their future. And actually during the online pivot, my students were immediately able to adjust to that change to the online environment because they were familiar with a lot of the tools and the project management of working with an online team. So it was something they could immediately apply to their lives. And I didn't realize how important it would be become to them. So I really recommend joining on the My Hometown project. From here, it's just going to expand with more universities and more students. And I look forward to seeing you and your students. Reach out to me if you have any more questions. It was a pleasure to speak with you today.
That's wonderful. This My Hometown project is really turning into something really special. It started as something in the classroom, as Mehrasa had mentioned. The pandemic forced it to expand and to evolve, and now it's turning into a supplemental kind of study abroad virtual program, which I don't think is going to replace study abroad, but it's going to be something that could enhance or preview or go along with a lot of international programs moving towards the future. And it's something that I think that highlights a lot of the special case uses, the affordances that this technology gives. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that project in the next session after this one. All right, we have one more presentation. This one is also another interesting one, talking about the use of this technology in Model United Nations. Angus McGregor is a professor and teacher here at the Kyoto University of Studies, and we've been working together to see if we can use this technology to host training simulations in virtual reality inside of in VR in actual replica that we created of the United Nations building, Security Council chambers in New York City. So without further ado, here is Angus McGregor talking about Model United Nations simulations in virtual reality.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the presentation Model United Nations Simulating International Diplomacy Using VR Technology. My name is Angus McGregor. I'm a teacher at Kyoto University of Foreign Studies and Kyoto Gaidai Nishi High School. And together with my colleague, Eric Hawkinson of Kyoto Gaidai, we prepared this simulation using VR technology. I'm not a gamer and I have very little experience with VR technology. But when Eric approached me about what is the potential of using VR with Model United Nations simulations, I became very interested. Excuse me. And one, I could learn something about VR technology. And two, I was interested in how possibly the use of this technology could help students prepare to participate in actual Model United Nations conferences. So we jumped right in and put together a little research project, and I'd like to present about that in the next 9 minutes or so. Now, what is Model United Nations? MUN, or MUN, as some people refer to it as, is an academic simulation where students role play as delegates to the United Nations, attempting to solve real global issues that are before the United Nations while representing their country's national interests. Model United Nations has over 70 years of history. It was first developed soon after the United Nations was established in 1945. And I've been involved in Japan over the past 30 years with two events as an organizer. The Kansai High School Model United Nations, which began in 1990 and is organized by Kyoto Gaidai Nishi High School. We bring over 250 students together for an annual 3-day English event. And also recently I've joined the organizing committee for the Japan University English Model United Nations, which has been around since 2010 and is organized by faculty and students at the universities listed there on your screen. At a typical Model United Nations, students are coming together. It's a multi-day event. They're representing their country. They're gathering in large groups to hear speeches and ask questions about those speeches. They're getting into topic groups to work on draft resolutions, debates, and voting. It's a very active, intense simulation of international diplomacy over about 3 days on college campuses. It's a great way. I'll teach English as a foreign language. It's a great way for teachers to bring global issues, public speaking skills, global awareness, and research right into the classroom. Students work for months before an event to actually prepare. And I've seen a lot of development. The event is very motivational for them, and also a strong sense of accomplishment after they've participated in these events. However, two things I have observed, both high school and university level, is negotiating strategies and the ability to agree and disagree is not quite as developed. And now that could be a timing issue. They're working on using their second language, English, their foreign language, to research and to prepare speeches. And also, they may not have the confidence and the experience to effectively, diplomatically use those language skills to agree and disagree with someone. So that is something I was hoping to explore. Decided to run a United Nations Security Council simulation. And Eric went about creating a replica in the VR environment of the Security Council chambers from New York City. He has the main room there with the circular desk, the chairs around the desk, and 4 meeting rooms, 2 in the wings off the main chambers there. He put in 2 virtual screens that we could use for sharing Google Docs. And he's also actually replicated the view from the curtains, from the windows when you draw back the curtains across the East River there in New York City. What I was curious about exploring is, could students negotiate a consensus building statement? Statements from the Security Council should be consensus based. Permanent members have veto powers. Could they do so while protecting their national interests? And how was the Avatar negotiating experience different or similar to their negotiating in face-to-face model United Nations? Wanted to create kind of a game-like environment with roles, crisis scenario, clear objectives, and a goal. So we brought together 7 students from Kyoto University of Foreign Studies, all of whom are experienced MUNers, and assigned roles. 5 permanent members to the Security Council. We have China, France, Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. And 2 very important stakeholders for the crisis we selected, the United Nations Assistance Mission to Afghanistan, as well as a representative from the former Afghanistan government. We went with the crisis scenario, the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan, which concluded on August 30th. As we were running the simulations in September and October, this was still very fresh in the news, and also thought it was very beneficial for the students to learn something about what was going on with this issue and the Security Council's opinion about the withdrawal of the United States. The goal for the simulation was the delegates were supposed to draft an official statement from the United Nations Security Council regarding the current situation in Afghanistan. And for a typical model United Nations, student delegates do their own research. Months in advance, they're preparing their own speeches. They're preparing notes. They're working with a faculty advisor to prepare. But it is pretty much very self-directed. While they're learning about the United Nations, they're also learning about the agenda topic. They're also learning about their own country. However, for this research project, time was limited. We really were only planning on running 2 90-minute simulation sessions and volunteer students who were coming together in the evening online to participate. So I decided to put together the content and the research myself. I wrote their background guides for their country, for the crisis, as well as their country's role in the United Nations. And then I created role objectives that were strategically crafted to represent their national interests and also give them some information for which they could negotiate from, things that they needed to hold fast to, things that they could negotiate with, and bring that to the simulation. Our schedule, we ran it over 3 days, with session 1, day 1 being an orientation that we ran for 1 hour. Eric ran this simulation in the VR environment. He gave a tour of the facilities, and students could become comfortable with navigating around the Security council chambers. Session 2 and Session 3, I chaired the meetings while Eric ran was our technical advisor. These were 90-minute sessions. We opened up both meetings with opening statements. Then after all 7 opening statements, and these are statements the students created themselves, we went into a Q&A session. And questions could be asked from their position at that round table. And then we started informal consultations. And I was looking forward to observing this. This is because students could take someone into a back room, into a meeting room, and have private conversations, or they could come back to the chambers for more public discussions, negotiating their goal for meeting 1, which was to submit draft clauses that they wanted to see included in the official statement. At the end of that session that evening, I then categorized all the clauses. I think we had 22 clauses submitted into topics, and those topics ranged from taking care of refugees, creating a safe zone in Kabul, freezing international assets of the Afghanistan government, how to multilaterally or bilaterally negotiate. Now, these are all topics that the students came up with themselves and crafted their clauses on. Sent that back out on a Google Docs. And then for Session 3, which was our simulation meeting number 2, another 90-minute session, they came back and gave their opening statements. We had a little bit of Q&A, and then we quickly went into informal consultations again. And the goal during these consultations was to discuss and negotiate those submitted clauses. So there was a lot of negotiation. Could they agree to a safe zone in Kabul? Russia and China wanted to hold fast to bilateral discussions. France, the UK, and the US were very adamant that all negotiations with the Taliban should be multilateral. And then they could amend those clauses in order to create a document that would they could all agree to, therefore consensus. Here's a video of what we did. It's about 2 minutes long, and I've taken 3 sections from opening statements, Q&A, and a little bit of informal consultations.
China is concerned on how can we all work together and be able to help Afghanistan and the Taliban. China supports all statements that call on the Taliban to follow international governing standards and respect the rights of all citizens, including women and girls, in order to be able to negotiate with the Taliban on aid and the future of China-Afghanistan relations. Therefore, China is willing to work with the Taliban to ensure a smooth transition towards a new government and expresses that the international community will support China's plan to be more involved in developing the Central Asia region and play a more active role in maintaining regional peace and security.
The floor is now open.
President.
Yes, United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. The United Kingdom is in favor of the idea of the United States of having the Security Council in multilateral conversations. Therefore, the United Kingdom is disagree with the idea of having a bilateral conversation with Taliban, which the idea proposed by Russia and China. Thank you. Do we have to build the camps in their neighboring countries and not in our countries? That was because we were concerning about the traveling distance between Afghanistan
Sorry to
and
interrupt. China, I was asking to talk to France as well.
Oh, why France?
Ciao.
So we were concerning about the long travel distance between our countries and Afghanistan. So we thought it'd be very easier and quicker and has less cultural differences to just to travel to the neighboring countries of Afghanistan. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. So, thank you for indulging me and watching that. So could students negotiate a consensus building statement? Yes, they were able to do this, and I expected that. That is a common goal at Model United Nations that they have participated in their drafting of resolutions. So they quickly jumped right in and knew that they had to work towards that goal, which was a consensus building statement. Could they do so while protecting their national interests? I was very happy to see that they stayed in character. They used some diplomatic language that they had been taught, and they were engaging with each other in a very professional manner, but also holding fast to protecting their national interests that had been given to them in their objectives roll card. I think that that is related to question 3 in the use of the avatar, and that, as some students said, that they felt a little more freedom to play the game, to stay in character. One, there was no facial recognition. They weren't negotiating with friends, so to speak, or people they had just met at the conference that they were interested in getting a coffee with. So they were in a game, and it was a little easier for them to maybe play hardball, to be more professional, and to try and really be a diplomat in representing what goes on in the real United Nations. So I think the avatar experience was quite different from their face-to-face experience, but it can complement a face-to-face simulation. Comments from the students, they're right here on the screen. I'll just kind of summarize a little bit. They all felt that Japanese students did kind of a better job at staying in character and representing their national interests. They were felt less intimidated to disagree. The fact that it was a game really motivated them to jump in and play it. So I see the future of how VR technology can complement MUN simulations, moving towards using this technology to help students prepare for actual face-to-face simulations, to practice. As China says, can we do this with other schools? I think bring other MUN schools together, clubs, have an online VR session, give advice on how to agree and disagree, how to negotiate diplomatically. And it provides an alternative environment for these MUN simulations to evolve. And I look forward to working with Eric and others who are interested in exploring the use of VR technology and how it can be part of MUN simulations in the future. And thank you for sticking around and watching this presentation. I will be available in the networking sessions and would be very interested to talk with those who are interested, who have comments or questions about Model UN, about Model UN preparations, as well as some of the things we talked about in this presentation and how VR technology can complement those MUN simulations. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Professor McGregor. And that is the last presentation of this kind of rapid fire case use. Hopefully, from this kind of series of talks, you can see the wide breadth of possibilities, opportunities that can be had with a little bit of nuance, thinking about privacy and technology use and digital divide and a lot of other concepts that might be available to you in your current situations, or maybe to you and your students or your study of communication, film, art, as we start to move into our media, be a part of our media, put the media all around us. And all of our presenters are still here in chat, and they'd love to get your information, or if you want to know further about their projects, I'm sure that they'd be willing to talk with you further. Not all of them, but many of them will be here with us for the networking session that's going after the next plenary session later this afternoon. And just to show you a little bit about what's coming on with those sessions before we end this one, we're going to be discussing a little bit more on this topic today. I'll be giving a talk about AR, VR, XR, all the realities, plural, and what they mean for the future of media coming up next. And all of the stuff that you saw today, most of it anyway, the environments, like, for example, the UN Security Council chamber, Professor Yano's Imagi Mono, you can have a chance to try those out yourself with some of the people that design these situations after that session in our networking session. So you can come and chat with us in VR or have discussions with us with the other platforms that we've created. So please stick around and join us for those sessions. On behalf of my colleagues that presented with us today, Mehrasa Alizadeh, Amelia Ijiri, Jay Klaphake, Angus McGregor, Corey Noxon, and Kojiro Yano. I thank you very much for joining us. I thank you very much for your attention, and we hope that we have a better, brighter, more responsible future in immersive technology, especially in educational contexts. Right now, we're a little bit over time, so we're going to take a quick break. Maybe the I4 team might have some announcements, but that will end this current session. Thanks very much for watching.